Morning all. I thought we could check out a very interesting counter this morning between Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian in the classic Bilbao Grand Slam tournament final of 2008. So we've just seen Bilbao pass just a few days back, and this was in 2008 now. We're in 2012 at the moment. But even in 2008, both of these players were over 2700. Magnus 2775, Levon Aronian 2737. Magnus kicked off with D4, and we saw the Slav defense after Ne4 Nfe6, knight c3 e6, which I believe is Semi-Slav, hemming in the bishop here voluntarily. After e3, knight Bd7. Black looks to have a standard kind of solid game. Bishop d3. Now d takes c4, getting a tempo for b5. Okay, the bishop drops back. Bishop b7. After a3, you would think b4 is discouraged and maybe leaves black with some isolated pawns, but actually this is the move which Levon chose. He's trying to generate some counterplay here, and possibly he doesn't mind the a and c pawns. He's got an idea, maybe later the a pawn can be used on a5 with the bishop supporting it. So we see b4, okay, and Magnus doesn't actually take on b4 here, but plays knight e4, okay, and black takes on e4, bishop takes e4, and now we see b takes a3, and again you'd expect to recapture here perhaps with b takes a3. Magnus actually made this into a pawn sacrifice from this position. He just castled. Okay, so what is going on here after a takes b? Is it really that bad for black? I think we need to check that out in the second pass of this game. It looks like some sort of compensation, but it's difficult to really make it concrete with variations here. But Levon thought it best to just play knight f6, hitting the bishop for the moment. In any case, he still holds this in reserve in any case here. White cannot take now bishop, he has to move the bishop. So bishop d3, and again we're faced with this question: is what is this about this gambit here? What is the compensation? Should Levon just ignore it, play bishop e7, or go for it? Well, one thing you might think intuitively about this position is if black does take time to play a takes, this bishop might be a tactical liability. This bishop is lined up on the diagonal, which might be dangerous at some point as well. White has a nice e5 square, but it's difficult really to see anything that concrete. Okay, and actually it is taken here. A takes b, bishop takes b2. Okay, so what are the problems in this position? Black plays here not bishop e7 but a5. So is he ready to answer, for example, queen b3 with something like maybe bishop a6, or is that too dangerous? Is that potentially the idea? It would be nice to get that bishop off the board for that one, but I'm not really sure if that's technically possible. We'll check that out in the second pass. But here, with this move, Magnus now, he's already a pawn down, and he sacrifices another. He plays d5. So what has he got for this one? Can black not just take this in multiple ways? Levon took with the knight. So, okay, what have we got for the 2 pawns investment here? These bishops do look nice, but and black is restricted in development now. If he plays bishop e7, he's got to be aware of bishop g7. Okay, let's follow through the game. Knight e5, which does allow some threats like queen h5 or queen g4, which might be dangerous here now. And in fact, black seems to be conscious of perhaps potential attack on f7 and use of h5. Playing knight f6, there might be other specific reasons, but knight f6 is played. Okay, and now Magnus attacks c6 basically with queen a4. So has black got time now to play bishop e7 and give c6 back? Well, it looks quite dangerous to do that. And bishop e7 doesn't look that safe anymore, okay, in that respect. But black needs to try and castle perhaps. He plays bishop b4 and he does give up c6 here. So knight takes c6 is played. Okay. If queen takes here, we've got a nasty discover check maybe, but maybe there's even stronger moves we'll check out in the second pass through the game. So at least Magnus has got one pawn back. He took, queen takes, king e7. So there looks to be definitely now compensation for being a pawn down. Rook fd1. Okay. Rook c8 is played. And now queen f3. So perhaps you'd like a few seconds just to quickly evaluate yourself this position and the pawn sacrifice. I think it looks pretty good now for white. Levon played queen b6, and we notice now after bishop d4 is played, a forcing move, that actually it would be nice to get onto this diagonal, but at the moment it's guarded by the bishop. That's something to bear in mind. Queen b8 and another forcing move, bishop a6, threatening to win the exchange. The rook goes to d8, and now is an interference move. We witness an interference move, bishop b7, interfering the queen's protection of b4. And you might think, what's the significance of bishop b7 here? Okay, and isn't it easy just to evict that bishop with rook d7? Well, rook d7 might run into bishop f6, and then rook takes d7. So rook d7 seems that might be a bit awkward. Levon tries h5 here. Okay. Now we see h3, just to calm h3, not rushing to do anything in particular. It's like black is tied down in this position already. He can't move his king back. You know, bishop f6 looks pretty strong intuitively in any case. So Levon tries h4, and now we see rook ab1 with a threat on the cards now, just sacking the exchange and getting onto this diagonal, which looks very dangerous. So Levon compromises his position a bit by playing e5. He's just weakened a bit the light squares by playing e5. And now the exchange sack happens. Rook takes ab, rook takes b4 rather, a takes, and now bishop c5 check. Where can the king run to? This doesn't look that healthy. King e6 is played. And now rook a1. So a big threat now of rook a6 check. The king is like on the run here. This should never happen from a solid Slav defense. Why has this happened? You might ask. Was this all forced? Okay, rook d6 trying to shelter the king on the 6th rank. That exchange is taken back, and the king is used to take here. If the queen takes, then perhaps Levon's worried about rook a6 skewering his queen to the king. It doesn't look that pleasant. So the king takes, and now we see check. After king e7, another seemingly very powerful forcing move is played here. Can you spot it if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay. Rook a8. White's controlling that a8 square with this battery. Where can the queen run to without losing the rook? it looks to be all over this position, unless this pawn can somehow compensate for the rook being lost. A few more moves are played here. Queen d6. Now white takes and takes that rook. Okay, b8 is the place to get back to perhaps, but for the moment, after b3, maybe rook b8, king c7 is a nuisance. So Magnus plays bishop a3, which looks pretty good anyway to get back to d3. Here's a rook up here. Is this really working for black? After knight d7, okay, that point's cut off. How does white get back to the pawn? Maybe it doesn't matter here, in fact. Maybe bishop d3 is sufficient. But Magnus takes on h4 and shows his rook can be used like this. After knight c5, actually Levon Aronian, he's had enough here and resigns. I think white simply can drop back the bishop here to e2, and if b2 then rook b4. Pawn's not going anywhere. Okay, let's run through the game again technically to see, really, was that the case? Black's king didn't get to safety. Let's check this out. Second pass, forensic investigation. In this position, okay, let's just check out first of all bishop e2, e4 or b2. If b2 rook b4 as mentioned, the pawn's not going anywhere. You might think knight a4, well, just okay, bishop d3, the pawn's definitely not going anywhere, and then rook takes a4's on the cards. Now on this possibility of e4, let's just check this out. In this position, okay, either bishop c4 or even rook h8. Bishop c4, b2, bishop a2, knight a4. The rook can take here. Doesn't matter about this. Rook b4. An exchange is enough at this level. So let's go back earlier in the game. So the Slav, rock solid generally. So after e3, knight bd7, we saw bishop d3. Not minding some forcing moves for black here, b5. Pardon me. So now bishop b7. And now a3, which seems to have the intention of discouraging b4, but it was played anyway. White played knight e4, which is fine, so white's got small advantage at this point technically. B takes, and now here's the mystery. Who didn't even is mentioning castling. What is the idea of just castling here instead of just taking back the pawn? Taking back the pawn, if we look at the dynamics, it is blocking the rook. The rook wants the a file. The a file played a great role later for that rook. It's like damaging the career of that poor rook to take where b takes a3. But surely black had some stuff after castling. Why not just bishop e7? If we go for a safe route, try and encourage white to do something about this. Now here, I guess, okay, to keep the rook, the career of the rook going, actually b3 might be a good move here, and the only move to get a small advantage, because then we can take on a3, and the rook's still got that a file and an attack point a7, so that might be something okay for white. So okay, bishop e7 or bishop d6, they were ruled out. Knight f6 was played here, and the bishop went back, and then we saw a takes b2, which for some reason in this position, now here is a mystery. Can black not just play bishop e7 here and try and get castled? In this game position, a5 was played. Let's try bishop e7. What compensation is there for the pawn? And our Houdini thinks white's doing very well here. Bishop a3, just calmly exchanging off dark square bishops. Is this really the case? This bishop maybe is the target. If white can control c5, maybe this is the idea. A positional blockade with this bishop being terrible. Let's check this out. Castles, queen b1 or b3 to hit the bishop straight off the bat. let's go with queen b1, queen c7, bishop takes e7, say, queen takes, rook c1. This bishop's locked in behind its own pawn. Is that enough compensation? a4, rook a4, stopping the use of b4, maybe doubling rooks on c6 at some point. Rook fb8, queen c2. If we evaluate this position here, the knight is protecting h7 at the moment, so let's go with g6, which releases the knight to go to d5. Is this still really good? A pawn down. Knight e5 is on c6 now. Knight d5, let's say. And now there's a tactical idea of knight b4 forking potentially, or protecting c6, or just wanting to give up c6. Bishop e4, knight b4, queen d2. Just to get an idea of what Magnus might have had in mind. Maybe this sort of position generally is good enough compensation on general grounds because of the superiority of the bishop and knight, so especially this bishop. But okay, maybe this pawn sacrifice it looks like a pure positional pawn sacrifice to torture this backward pawn on the c file and to do with this bishop. Black's going to have an uncomfortable game for a long time perhaps here. So maybe that's the idea. And Levon didn't like these positions. He didn't want this kind of grovelly position as black. If he tries to evict the knight on e5, let's say f6, then I think that doesn't help. Knight d3, and in fact the knight can go to that very nice c5 square soon. So if it takes, again we get these positions where this backward pawn, black, although a pawn up, it's this bishop and this backward pawn really, which makes for an unpleasant time for a long time. So it's a deep, very deep pawn sacrifice, maybe we can say here. Levon tries a5, which maybe has the idea of a quick bishop a6, but I'm not really sure if tactically that would stand up to scrutiny. So here, actually, queen. Okay, so d5. Now this really confuses the engine. It's not mentioned at all. d5. And we go to black having some sort of advantage. There's cd, ed, knight d5, or maybe even queen d5 to consider. On queen d5, knight e5, what is going on here? Can black not try and castle? Queen a4, castles. Where's the compensation here, you might ask? It's two pawns. Two pawns. But here, knight c4 might look dangerous for bishop f6. Or this battery, queen a1. Does white try and gain back material? It doesn't seem in the spirit of it. So that looks pretty unclear, if pretty on here. Now knight takes d5 might not have been the best from an engine point of view. It actually gives white something to play with. What about c takes? Let's rule out c takes, pardon me. Was that actually playable? No, actually, bishop b5 check. Then knight e5. That's definitely good for white. What to do about d7 here? That's horrible. And if bishop c8, that looks grim. Rook c1 actually threatens rook c8 now, so there's no time for this. There were two choices there which seem okay as a way of reacting to d5, ed or queen d5. Playing bishop e7, you don't really want to get your structure wrecked after d takes. There's that diagonal now, surely, queen b3. If queen d5, bishop c4, I guess. Or queen takes b7. Even stronger. So okay, the knight might not have been, let's say from a brief engine point of view, might not have been the best. So knight e5, but really, what's the idea here? Is bishop e7 really ruled out by something crude here, like queen h5? The engine's mentioning queen h5 here, I mean, that is a weakness of the last move. The knight taking on d5, releasing h5 for the queen. g6, queen h6, bishop f6. Queen dropping back. Have we got enough here? Well, now, if the bishop sets itself up as a tactical vulnerability, the knight c6 here, attacking the queen and the bishop. So this would be okay. We can get back some pawns here. So I think this position is a key here after g6. Queen. Okay, we drop back the queen, and what does black do? In fact, white technically looks to have an advantage here. And again, is bishop g7 unplayable here? Let's have a look at this. What is going on tactically here? Bishop takes g6, simply just attacking the queen, of course. So, okay, that looks to be a difficult position for black here already. So this looks, knight e5 looks dangerous. Black went back with knight f6, cutting out the queen h5 possibilities, but now we see queen a4 on c6 now. And white does have the advantage, you know, even from an engine point of view, white's doing fine now, it seems. Bishop d6, knight c6. Now here you might think, well, use that pin, queen d7. Okay, so there's either knight a5 to check out or rook ac1. If black castles here, rook fd1, bishop takes, rook takes. Does white have enough for the pawn? Well, he has got the bishop pair and he's looking at black's king quite menacingly. In this sort of position, there's a tactic now. Bishop takes f6. What is going on here? Well, if takes, check. Here threatening mate, check, and then taking. Okay, that's good. Now, queen takes. What will be going on here? Bishop takes h7, check. Queen 4, prompting a fatal dark square weakness, it would seem. So if g6, we just go to h4, prompting, you know, well, that's winning, isn't it? Black would have to, black's faced with mate. So that's right. This idea of bishop takes h7 here. Very quick route. If king takes, check, and then again we have that theme again, pardon me, provoking the fatal dark square weaknesses with queen g4 in this position. So it seems Aronian's missed. It looks as though even in this position there's compensation here. He plays bishop b4. Magnus takes on c6, and the king is now stranded in the centre, unfortunately. Well, he tries actually king e7. What if king f8? Does that look any safer? Rook fd1, threatening a discovery. Rook c8. Is white really better here? Apparently so. Bishop f1 now threatens d8. So knight d5, queen a6. White's definitely got compensation here for the pawn, we can say. Look at the rooks, they're speaking to each other here, they're not for black. The king on f8 looks awkward. We can just evaluate that, and that looks to me enough compensation for the pawn. So okay, we'll go back to the position, king e7. It's dangerous for black now. Queen goes to f3, we saw queen b6, now we saw bishop d4 kicking the queen away. Back, it goes to the back row. Now the rook goes to d8, to bishop b7. Okay, now h5, which now here actually there seems to be an opportunity for black to have equalised with e5. What is this? e5. Is this technically an opportunity which was missed? Bishop b6, rook d6. Looks about equal. What did Levon play? He didn't play e5. What is this? So we see bishop d4, and we saw bishop a6, and here we saw bishop b7. Is bishop b7 actually an over-optimistic move for Magnus because of e5. In the game we saw h5, which apparently is still great for white. But what is this then? Let's check this out. e5. So we saw this variation. If white regains on a5, queen b4, tactical vulnerability. Check. That doesn't look too healthy though. King d6, this is a typical computer line. Would a human really do this or even look at this? And now white is, if white has to play an awkward move now, well the rook seems to be caught tactically, because there's also queen b1 check here, mating white, or queen e1. Okay, so in that, this is just an engine line, so e5 is dangerous with rook d6. Okay, so that appears to be an equalising opportunity which may have been missed in the game. So in the game we saw h5, which actually h3 then takes away all the back row issues now as well from those variations. They're all gone now, as well as depriving use of g4 square there. So black playing h4. Maybe Levon had invested a lot of time, was in time travel or something, but here now we've got time for this positional sack. Black doesn't want to take on d4 now, surely. If he took on d4 now, this is fine for white. Finally, he's got his pawn back and still with the advantage, one would guess here. So the exchange sack sees the black king hunt begin. Huge advantage now for white, +5. So a6 is an access path to the king, but okay, made to look so easy, but a lot of calculations involved, and now it's clearly just winning for white. Levon played a few more token moves here. Well, actually, here he resigned, I think, with his move. So a fascinating game, I think you'll agree, where Magnus makes use of a very intuitive looking second pawn sacrifice d5, which I think is the innovation of the game in terms of opening theory. I believe the rest is seen before as a standard pawn sacrifice, but what really made the game stand out was move 15 d5. But was it just of surprise value? Was it repeated in later games? I'm not sure it was that repeated, but still a fascinating game, putting Levon under huge pressure, perhaps psychologically. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.